Hi everyone, welcome to the topic of SGX Listing. We'll be covering the basics in this video. In this video, or rather in this topic, you will still need to refer to your study notes as well as the mind map. The basis of this video will be following the sequence of the study notes. This is your mind map that's been given to you. In this topic, you'll be separated into 4 sections. 1, we'll be covering the listing basics, the listing rules, and SGX markets, which comprises of the main board as well as the SGX Catalist. So these are the things that you need to know about main board, and these are the things you need to know about the SGX Catalist. Now let's go through the listing basics. There are basically 2 forms of listing. One, it is called a primary listing. It is actually the first and new listing on SGX. It's the first time that this company is listed. And for primary listing, it's important for them to comply to what they call continuing listing obligations. What are continuing listing obligations? They are obligations that needs to be satisfied by the companies that are listing to continue listed in SGX. Now the other form of listing is called secondary listing. This kind of listing are for companies that are already listed on another exchange, and this is usually overseas. And they are seeking a second listing on SGX. Well, for these companies which is secondary listed, they do not need to comply to the continuing listing obligations. There are 2 listing methods. First, you can list via what they call introduction. Listing via introduction is for secondary listing or shares that migrating from one exchange to another. In this case, they do not require any funds at the point of listing because they are already listed. So, in this case, no shares will be offered to the investing public. For this kind of listing, you have to lodge an introductory document with SGX that is not subjected to public comments. The more common way of listing is called initial public offer, which is IPO. This is for primary listing, where new shares are issued and offered to the investing public. In this kind of listing method, you have to lodge a prospectus with MAS. And what is a prospectus? A prospectus is basically a document that is used to lodge with MAS as well as for the public to understand the company better. In another video, we will be talking more about prospectus. Now let's talk about initial public offer. As the name suggests, this is the public offering of securities. And the word initial means it is new. It can be via fixed price or tender basis. What's the difference between the two? Fixed price basis means that when the shares is being offered, it is offered at just one price. And tender basis, there can be different price based on the tender process. And this is done using 2 methods. One is called Dutch auction method, where successful bidders pay the price that they bid. Okay, what does this mean? Let me give you an example. If, for example, there are 5 bidders, and they each give a price. Let's say, for example, this is 120, 130, 140, 150 and 160, for example. And assuming that only 3 shares will be allotted, the highest 3 will be allotted with the shares. And the price at which they bid, or rather the price at which they are offered, will be the same price that they have bidded. This is called Dutch auction method. While in single strike method, successful bidders pay at the lowest price submitted by the lowest successful bidder. What does this mean? It means that these 3 investors which got the shares, which are allotted the shares, will only be paying just one price, which is the lowest price, and in this case is 1.4. And there's always a minimum price that is set by the issuer that the offer cannot be lower than. Now let's go through a definition called placement. The placement is the sale of securities by an issuer or an intermediary to persons selected or approved by the issuer or intermediary. This is basically just the process of allotment. Once the shares are allotted, then they place these shares with the investing public. Now, what kind of listing service is required during SGX listing? Well, you need a financial institution as a sponsor, and this one only applies to Catalist. And you need a lawyer, obviously, to oversee the legal issues that the SGX listing is required. You need a certified public accountant as well to be able to evaluate the issuer's readiness in terms of the spreadsheets, in terms of financial statements, and prepare for the launch. You also need a public relations firm to convey any corporate message to the investors or potential investors. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of listing? The advantages is that it provides the company an established market for its shares. You're also able to provide additional working capital, obviously, because they are listing to get more funds. And because they are listed, they will be in good position to acquire other companies as well. Being listed also means that you can promote good profile and image to the company. And in this way, you provide more opportunities to transfer control to professional managers to manage the company. So the company can keep growing and keep growing. And obviously, another advantage is it provides investment for shareholders, so that shareholders holding the shares will have opportunity to have capital appreciation. Now, what are the disadvantages? The disadvantages of being listed is that the listed company will have to comply with the listing manual as well as the corporate disclosure policy, which provide additional costs. And this is always not desirable because it eats up the profit. And because you are listed, there is always a pressure to expand and grow. And there's always a pressure to maintain profits and dividend payments. Shareholders will be looking at the company and scrutinize and to make sure that they can receive all these benefits. And because they are listed, companies are managed in a very formal manner. For example, if they have any events that has to be announced, they have to hold a press conference, they have to lodge documents to SGX and things like that. So everything is all documented and done in a very formal way. And being listed, not only are they in a position to acquire other companies, they are also vulnerable to takeovers as well. And of course, loss of privacy. Being a listed company, every action that the company makes will be scrutinized by the investing public. Now, this is the difference between SGX Mainboard versus SGX Catalist. Well, for target companies, Mainboard target established companies only, and they require the companies to be able to satisfy the quantitative entry requirement. And also, for Catalist, this is targeting fast-growing companies, SMEs basically, and there's no quantitative entry requirement for them to be listed on the Catalist. Under regulatory approach, the Mainboard companies are exchange regulated and exchange supervised. But for Catalist, they are exchange regulated, but they are sponsor supervised. So sponsors need to supervise them. And what is sponsor? Sponsor is basically any financial institution that is supposed to oversee the companies to help them list in SGX. And for review of IPOs and post-IPO supervision, this is done by the exchange for Mainboard companies. And for Catalist, again, it is done by the sponsors. And the key advantages to companies listed in Mainboard is that obviously it gives you established branding, you have access to wider range of investors, and there are more product types. For example, in this manner, it is talking about financial products. Things like options, warrants, you have access to much more, you are open to much more product types in the market. For Catalist, the key advantages is that the companies are able to enter the market faster, and obviously it's easy to fundraise for acquisition and disposal. And there's always ongoing sponsor guidance so that you can promote to the main board with the proper way. Now this gives you the end of the basics for SGX listing. Thank you.